College, the podcast. I'm Peg Keough. Today I'm chatting with Melissa Mieyr. Melissa's spent many years as a high school counselor, and then she started working directly with families and students. She's part of our CAP experts team that we call the pros. Today we're talking all about college application essays. Melissa will cover all the nuts and bolts, and she'll also cover the role of AI in this process. So stick around. We've got a lot to unpack, and I know you'll want to hear it. Okay, I am super excited today to be here with one of our CAP admissions experts, Melissa Mieyr. She is, I think we've talked about this on the podcast before, that I'm actually in charge of finding the best experts that are throughout the country in financial aid and admissions. Melissa's a bit of a unicorn. Like Dan Bizig that you've met. We were lucky enough to find these guys to be, we call them our pros because we're college aid pros, so it's kind of fun. But they really are experts in the field, and Melissa is a financial aid and admissions expert. Today, we're going to tap her brain all about essays. We're going to talk about AI just because it's a thing now. It's part of all of our lives, and what role that should or shouldn't play in this process. And as a parent or a student, how should you be thinking about this when you're working on college essays? And I know we might have some people listening that have current seniors in high school, or they're about to start after Labor Day. So this is super relevant. But also if you've got younger kids in high school, it's going to come up before you know it. So I thought this was a great time to talk essay because, as Melissa's going to share, like, if you have a senior, it's game time. Like, it's time to be working on these essays for sure. So Melissa, you want to say hi? Okay. So let's just dive in here. So as I kind of teed up for like rising seniors, and I say that because I live in Arizona now, and some of these kids actually started school, Melissa. My husband and I were watching the news, and like they started, like it was before the end of July. I was like, these kids are already back in school. You know, when I lived in Texas, it was mid-August, and you're in Dallas, right? It was mid-August and they got out before Memorial Day. So some kids, they're already into school, you know, whatever grade they're in. So like I said, it is game time. So what should, just from all the families you work with, what should these kids be doing right now around, you know, they're into their applications, but around the essay piece?
So students right now should really be using this time before school gets super crazy to organize themselves and get started on these application essays, because you've got not only the personal statement that you're going to write, but you've got all these supplemental essays that are going to be needed for some schools. And not every school has a supplemental essay, but I'm in Texas, and some of our lovely Texas schools, one of the most popular ones here, has quite a few essays. And so it's on the list of almost all of my students here in Texas. And we have to be organized, and you have to get started now because, for goodness sakes, football season starts this week here in Texas.
Can't wait for college football.
Students in band and drill team and, you know, cheerleaders and football players, all this kind of thing. And school's going to get crazy, and it's going to really sneak up on you, these deadlines, and you're not going to have these done. I tell my students to look at all of their essays, break it up by week. I need to have this many done this week and this many done this week so that they meet their deadlines, because otherwise it's really going to get away from them.
Yeah, I remember my son, both of my kids did an interview at Wake Forest. My daughter didn't apply. But my son, Brendan, I mean, back then, that was a bit ago, there were 7 supplemental questions. And I almost felt like, you know, my husband handled that part because he's the writer in the family. But those shorter, you have to be even more concise. Like, I almost think that's harder than the main essay, which, yeah, talk about that for a minute. Like the Common App that we had, you know, Dan Bizig on a while back, and I chatted with him about the Common App, but there's that one main essay in there, right? Melissa, you want to just cover that real quick?
Yeah, so there is the main essay, and there are multiple options that a student can choose from their prompt. But for me, it's really not about worrying about what that prompt is, because if you look at the last prompt, kind of an open door. You can write about anything that you want to write about. So to me, it's really about your story, the student's story. And I do a lot of brainstorming with them to get them to share all kinds of stories. And we go, aha, that's it. That's the one. That's that big story that they're going to be able to write a lot about and share their characteristics and their values and who they are. And they become that human being, and they're not just a bunch of stats on that screen of their transcript and those kinds of things. And so that is the big piece there on that main essay, is really finding the story that's going to share something about the student, because that's the whole point of the essay, is becoming that human.
Yeah, and to me, and this isn't my area of expertise, so if I say something you don't agree with, please chime in. But to me, it's the one place that a kid can be unique, right? And it's hard. It's got to kind of grab somebody, and they don't spend a lot of time reviewing essay, that the whole application. They don't. It's many of these schools, what is it? UCLA has over 140,000 applications last year. I mean, and obviously they're the most, and I'm picking an extreme case, but still they don't have that much time. So it's got to be something that grabs them. And from what I've heard from people like you, Melissa, and experts in the field, like, don't repeat what they already know from your application. Like, they already, me. I already know you're a 4-time varsity tennis player. If you have a story around a challenge and a match or something that tells something about your character, that might be a good thing. But the ones I've read, just it almost doesn't matter what the content is. It doesn't have to be, oh, I spent a summer in Czechoslovakia, the previous Czechoslovakia, you know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't have to be, I have to have the money to do some grandiose thing to write about. It could be that I remember one that this girl wrote about having tea with these Russian women that she knew. And it was such a cool essay because of how she did it, not because she was somewhere that was extra special, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it really is that unique element about who you are. And I tell my students all the time, it doesn't have to be something that you would see on the 5 o'clock news. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be newsworthy. It can be a very, very small something in the student's life, but it was transformative. So they learned something from it. They are able to share, you know, a little bit about who they are, but introspection and being able to analyze your situation and see what you learned from it, how you grew, and how you're going to take that lesson and move forward in your life is really a big piece of what they're trying to see. And they want to see how a student thinks, and that allows them to do that. So it doesn't have to be this big grand story. It can be something very small.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too that there's a little, and this is, you got to walk a fine line, but there should be some vulnerability potentially based on what they're talking about. I've seen some where kids will go a little overboard. No, we don't want to talk about how you used to steal constantly from the store. That might not go resonate. Or there are other times when I've heard stories where then the expert like you would say, okay, no, that's a little too much. So I think in this space, it is important to have a guide, somebody who really knows it, and not to knock like English teachers or anything. And please chime in here, Melissa. But to me, like, I hear people all the time, well, she's working with her language arts teacher, and that person might get it and might understand what college applications and colleges are looking for, but maybe not. Like, it's not necessarily what you would turn in for a plus assignment in a honors English class.
Yeah, and I share that with students as well. They're experts in every field, and English teachers are amazing at writing, but they typically write differently. They encourage students to pick up a thesaurus and use the big flowery words, and that's not what we're trying to do in a college essay. That voice is so super important, and that is special to that student, and it's more of a journalistic kind of writing because you're telling kind of a life story. And I tell students all the time, if you're struggling with writing, that utilize the tools that we have. This is one AI thing that you can do. Go tell your story to your parents or to somebody, to a friend, and utilize one of those apps that will transcribe your story. And it's a storytelling kind of thing. It's not this very structured, one entry paragraph, one exit paragraph, and three in the middle. That's not the way it is. And also, English teachers haven't read thousands of college essays. And so somebody that has is going to benefit the student to be able to give them some feedback in that area.
Yeah, yeah, I think that I like that journalistic that you said. I like that. I knew a woman a while ago who said too, like when she would be back when we actually met with kids in person, she might even be like meeting with them wherever. She would say to the students, like, tell me what's in your bedroom, like what's on your bookshelf, what's on your bed. And that was a way, because you're saying it could be this little tiny thing that even the parents wouldn't even think of as something, and somebody to help you kind of just share tons and then go, "Hey, tell me more about that." That might be something that's really cool. And the person who's listening is not the parent or the aunt or somebody who knows a lot about the person already. And I mean, I thought that was just really cool. Like, tell me what's in your room. What do you
Yeah,
have on
and
the walls?
one of the things that I do with students, one of the brainstorming activities is I have them list all the like important events that have happened in their life. And I tell them, again, it doesn't have to be a big something. It can be a little something, all the important people in their life, and then things that represent who they are or are special to them. And then I make them make the connections between those things. And we spend at least an hour just telling me stories. And whenever I hit on one that I start to see some light shining through, I question them a lot. I ask lots of questions to dig deeper. And that's how we find their story. And that's how we figure out, this is going to be something I can write 650 words about, and all of those interesting little things. Somebody that can question you as a student whenever you're telling a story and kind of pull out other things. It's really important because, sometimes excuse me, I have a student that was a camp counselor, but he didn't think a whole lot of that job. But I was like, wow, look at the influence that you have on these younger children. And he didn't even see that. He just saw it as a
Yeah,
job. And
yeah,
and I'm like, look at those leadership skills that you have. And it got him to tell me stories about a kid would run up to him and be excited to share news with them. Those are big things. You built trust with that little kid. Those are great characteristics to be able to share with your reader, because that's what they're wanting to see is, how do you tick?
yeah.
What do you do every day?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So these supplemental questions, like if somebody's listening, like, oh my gosh, what would those be? Like, what are typical? I know there's all different ones, but what are some of the typical questions that colleges will ask?
So some of the main typical ones are, why this college, why this major, leadership, community, and activities. So those are kind of the main topics that you're going to see over and over again. And some of those are going to require some research. I hope you did some research when you built your college list and you got some of that. But if not, it's time to step back and do some research, because you want to be very specific whenever you're talking about why this college. They know who they are. You don't need to regurgitate who they are.
They know
You
they have a pretty campus.
know how the campus and you connect. You've got to, for everything you say about a campus, you've got to connect in some way. So, with some kind of activity that you've done that you want to continue on campus, you find a club that exists there and you talk about, or you are interested in a specific program that they have. Why? Because you were doing something like that previously. You want to find those connections there. So that's really important. And sometimes, whenever they ask community questions, they're asking not only about the communities that you're a part of, which can be many different things, but also the community that they're trying to build. They want to see if you're going to be a good member of that community. So you're going to have to do some research on who is the community of this particular university and how do you match up, and you want to make sure that you resonate with them and are able to share that and vocalize that in your
Yeah, yeah,
writing.
like how you're gonna show up on campus, what you're gonna add to the whole campus. That's where I think, it's a whole nother podcast to discuss campus visits. But I know with my kids, it was like, go sit in a class, look, see what professors are there. And then if you have an interaction like that that's hugely powerful, then you can put that in your why us question. And then it shows, wow, this kid had initiative, sat in a class, he or she reached out to a professor, so it's just even more like, wow, this kid really
Yeah.
likes our school,
And you don't wanna be surface level, you wanna find something that's unique. If you can read that essay back to yourself, and it could happen at any college, you've not written a why essay for that school.
Yeah, that's
You want to make sure that it is something that is unique to that particular school. So, like I said, find a special program, something that is unique to them and matches with you, because if it can be to any college, you've not done your job.
Yeah, that's a great I remember, I won't say the school, but way back when we were looking with our 2 kids at one of the schools, my husband and I kinda looked at each other, one of the schools at the admissions thing, they're like, "And remember, when you're writing your essay, make sure you change the name to us and don't have the" and we looked at each other like, "Really? That's the big tip?" But obviously, it happens because they were writing it. So to your point, I think that's a gem right there. So I'll repeat it, what you said, like your why us, like it can't, if you can just say, oh, I wrote a why us and that works for this school and this school and it's probably not a good why us, right? And I know just from talking to some of these people at the universities, like that's a big deal to them. You got to understand their yields matter, meaning they offer you admission, they want you to come, right? That's a big deal to them. So the more they can be impressed with the student, but also feel like, wow, this kid really took time to understand our university. That means they're really interested in us and more likely to send that deposit check. I mean,
And that
ultimately,
really demonstrates interest to them. That's a whole nother podcast in
yeah, that's
itself
a whole
too.
nother podcast.
But
Exactly. Yeah.
that shows that you took the time to research and learn about their school, and so you're truly interested in attending their school. And so, again, super important because many of these supplementals may have an element tying it back to the university, not only just the why this college, but the community one, the leadership, because they want to see how you took something that you've done in the past and you're going to carry that forward into their community and to be a leader on their campus. So if you have done your research and are able to show those things, then that's great.
Well, and to your point earlier, you said it is like you should know some of these things, or why do you want to go to this school? I don't care if it's a state school, it's a lot of money nowadays. So you want to make sure you've picked a place for specific reasons too, where obviously it has the major you want, but you look even deeper. If it's a bigger school, there's a lot of opportunities to get involved. And just essay aside, you should be doing that anyways to know that's the best place for you to spend your next 4 years. And the activities you do might be resume building, helps you form who you are as an individual to help you see what you want to do after the 4 years, which is the whole point of college, anyways, right? So it all ties in.
Absolutely. A couple of things that I want to share about some of these supplementals. You want to make sure as you're completing the Common App, I always tell students make sure that you've completed the Common App form before you start writing your essays, because as you answer questions, things may pop up and populate. Oh, now we've got a box here for an essay, because whenever you choose your major, those things may show up. Or when you say, I want to participate in the honors college, an essay box is going to show up. So you want to make sure that you've gone through the entire application, that you aren't missing something, because when you get ready to hit that submit button, you don't want something missing. And also, whenever you see the words optional, Optional is not optional. They're testing you. It's only optional if it doesn't apply to you. There are some situations on some of the essays that would not necessarily apply, but yeah, optional is not optional.
Yeah. I used to say that about interviews when counselors from the colleges were in our area and they would
Mhm.
say optional interviews. I'm like, "Ah, sign up, do it, do it, do it. It's optional, but it's not." So I think that's another gem. You're just dropping gems today, Melissa. So, yeah. So, and we keep talking about the Common App. Now, just talk for a minute about not all schools use the Common App, or some schools could have another option, right?
Schools that are on the Common App. And so that encompasses a large number of schools, but not all schools use that. And there are certain reasons why you may not use it and you use what we call the institutional application. So the school itself has an application. There are some schools that don't participate in the Common App and they just have their institutional. There are some schools that are on the Common App and also have an institutional application. So, like, some states do like a fee waiver day, but you have to use their particular application. Or I've got one school that it's kind of a point system whenever you apply and the student knows almost immediately. And it's a really neat, presentation. So I like to have them do that. But for certain reasons, you might use the institutional application. And then also, there are the other group applications. Like I'm in Texas, we have an Applied Texas, which has all the Texas schools on it. And then you've got like the University of California system where you've got all the UC schools on there. And the UC schools don't do the same format of essays. They have eight choices. You have to choose four to do for their application. So a little bit different. Most of my students that do both, they have some crossovers. So they're able to use essays that they've written for other schools. And that's another little important piece is when you organize yourself and you can see all the essays that you have to do, you can find common threads and you might be able to double dip with the same essay with minor tweaks in it. So you don't want to, reinvent the wheel for every essay if you don't have to. And so those are able to do that. And then also like if you're applying outside of the US, like the UCAS system for the UK schools, for instance, they have a separate application. So lots of different things. You just have to check and see what your schools are using.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's wrap up and talk about AI. And this is the big thing in education now. I know my husband even he teaches a graduate level online program that he started at a university, and he's having issues with even students using AI to take tests, and that's just the big thing that's out there. But let's focus now about essays and what role you think that should play, if any, in essay writing.
So the first thing students need to realize is they need to know each of their school's policies. So each school that's on your list, what is the policy for AI? Some don't have, a very spelled out AI policy, where others have it very laid out. So they say no AI can be used for outlining, drafting, writing your essay. So that's a big thing if that's part of their policy. Whereas, spell check, grammar check, those kind of things are okay. So you have to know what each school is asking of you. Some schools, when this first came out, had a really very strict, you can't use it for any reason at all. And then some others are, different. And some of those that were really strict in the beginning have come down off of that because they realize it's a part of everyday life today. And so you just have to understand how you can use that. And you do have to realize that on the Common App, you are signing off at the end. You are stating that the work that you have done is your work. It's original work of yours that you're turning in, expression of yourself. But the biggest thing about AI is if you are using AI to write your work, you're going to lose the voice. The voice of the student is what needs to shine in this. This is the lens in which that person sees the world and is going to write this. And even parents stepping in and helping write, they lose the voice of the student. And
Yeah.
so a teen's writing is very different from this professional AI and a 40 or 50-year-old parent. And so that voice gets lost and the personal details don't come out. It's going to start sounding very generic. And just like when I was talking about writing the Why Us essay, if you don't find those unique personal things to you, and you are utilizing those in your essay, then again, it's not personal. They're not learning anything about you. And AI will never be able to generate personal details. And so that's really important to understand. Is there a place for it? Absolutely. AI, obviously, we've got spell check, grammar check. It's a great tool to use to do research. So when you're looking for those unique qualities at a campus or things like that, then use it in that way to do some of your research. But to actually write, be very careful about utilizing it because there are AI checkers. Okay. They can detect, and colleges can run your essay through those and detect the human element in it. So you want to, again, use it wisely and be careful. Tell my students that one ethical way of using it is when we are working on their descriptions for their activities, because we've already written a resume and they wrote the resume, but we've got these long descriptions and we have to get it down to 150 characters. So you've written it and you're asking for support and kind of trimming it. So that's an ethical way of using it because you've already written that. But be very careful about using it in your essay because that voice is really what's important piece of that, and that you cannot get from AI.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's those are great thoughts. It's tempting. There's so much everybody's doing all day, every day, and it's easy to say, "Oh, I can offload this. It'll be much faster." But it's just that, like you said a bunch of times today, that personal piece and really them feeling like they know you a little bit. That's the key there. And, AI can't do everything. So it's really just like anything. Leverage it for what it's good for, like you said, the spell check and this or that, or here's some facts, condense them. It needs to be 150 words. That's taking what you've already written and asking them to. There's some good ways that it can be a time saver, but creating your personal statement or even the why us kind of deal, you don't come through. And also, I would think in the personal statement, they get a feel for how you write. You got to make sure that all your supplemental questions now, like the same person is writing all of it, right? Not, hey, this doesn't even sound like, and in before AI, it was parents, right? "Ah, this doesn't sound like the kid. This sounds like the kid, but this doesn't. So I think parents have been replaced with AI, I think is kind of what it is. But yeah, yeah. So okay, so before we wrap up, do you have one? I mean, I have a bunch of stuff I jotted down that I've learned, which is great, but one or two key takeaways for everybody before we wrap up today.
Biggest things, start now, start early, get it done as soon as possible because this takes longer than you think. Especially your big essay can take a 3-week cycle by the time you write it, review it, clean it up, all those kinds of things. And then something that I didn't mention throughout my talk, but really important, show, don't tell. Make sure you're sharing examples. Don't say, I'm a leader, give an example. Let them live and walk in your feet with you in that example. You can't just say, I'm a good leader, I'm a good time manager. Share the story, explain that. That's a really big deal. I have to work with students a lot on that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's great. And more you share a story where it gets almost like my daughter, my husband being a creative writer by background, like her essay was all about she wanted to study social work and she had done all this work with on mission trips and everything. And she talked about her relationship that she formed with a homeless guy on the streets of DC. And it was like a story And it was very powerful, and it tied into what she wanted to study and everything. But I mean, she got in almost everywhere. And I always said, you know what? It's because that essay grabbed everybody and it tied into everything she's done and what she says she wants to study and the school she was looking at. And it was just a complete package. So I think that's great. Show, don't tell. That's awesome. Because you can tell anything. You can say,
Right.
I'm a great leader, I'm a great this, I'm great at community, but okay, I could say that, you could say that, but without proof or a story, it's just words. So that's awesome. I wrote that one down too. Well, Melissa, thank you, thank you. You dropped a lot of gems today. I learned, and I've been around the block. Don't have your expertise, but that's why I love talking to you guys, because I always learn new stuff, even though it's not what I do every day. So thank you, and we're excited to see everybody next time. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, please follow us, share us, and even send it to a parent or counselor or anyone you think would enjoy it or would get some. Wait, let me do that again. I was kind of ad-libbing. Let me do that again. I just need to read what's here. Okay, let me start over. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, please follow us, share it, or maybe even send it to a parent or a counselor or anyone who you think would enjoy it. I'm your host, Peg Keough, and I was joined by Melissa Mieyr, one of our CAP admissions experts. This episode was produced by the wonderful Eileen Campbell. Have a great rest of your day. Excited to see you back next time.